Thank you so much to each one of you for being present. We have some churches that I help out with preaching at, and want to take a moment and say welcome to everybody that is watching in Clovis, New Mexico, and in Servant's Heart Chapel there in Cary Street Fellowship in Zanesville, Ohio. Would you give them a round of applause and tell them you're glad they're here? Appreciate you guys. Glad you're with us today. Sometime back, I was talking with a friend, and they said, man, why is it that our neighborhoods aren't really what they used to be? It used to be like, it's kind of like neighbors looked out for each other, and used to be if your kid got in trouble, everybody would tell you, right? The whole community. It's like everybody. Did you guys ever have that happen to you where you got it out while you were out somewhere, and then you got it when you got back home because your dad or mom found out about it from the neighbor, right? It used to be that people looked out for one another and they'd talk over the back fence. Anybody ever just like stop and talk over the back fence? You remember those days? Rascal Flatts wrote a song that kind of, when this person said this, it brought this song to mind. And that song is, I Miss Mayberry. Sitting on the porch, drinking ice cold cherry Coke. Where everything is black and white, picking on a sixth string, people pass by and they call you by your first name. Watching the clouds roll by. I miss Mayberry. Well, it seems like everybody these days is realizing in places and at different times, and suddenly it'll just kind of hit you, that our culture in some ways is highly disconnected. Like it feels like we have more ways to connect than we ever have before, but we're not actually connected as much as maybe you used to feel like it was. This week, I was thinking about this message, and I typed in quotes on Google, people don't know their neighbors. All right, so I put in like quotes. So it just searches for that phrase, not all the words in the phrase. So I typed in quotes, people don't know their neighbors, and it came back with over 4.6 million hits. That phrase has been used on the internet 4.6 million times. There's a lot of people realizing this. Like, you know, it seems like for all the connection that we have on Facebook, and isn't that grand, right? I mean, the connection, how many of you have just had a marvelous time on Facebook with someone in the last 30 days? Can I see your hands? All right, you know what I'm talking about? That one person, or that two people, or maybe that 20 people that just... In 2010, there was a survey by the Pew Research Center, and 28% of Americans, about 1 in 3, almost 1 in 3, 1 in 4 for sure, didn't know any of their neighbors by name. They had no idea. They didn't know who the people around them even were. Now, why is that? Now, I could ask for feedback here, but let me just tell you why I think it is. All right, here's if I was to ask for feedback and say why is that we don't know? Why is it that people don't know? We're disconnected more than ever before. I think we'd get a variety of answers, but some of it would kind of fall into kind of this group of answers. First of all, maybe we're afraid. We're afraid. It seems like we're afraid of people getting up in our business sometimes, right? Sometimes maybe you don't like, oh, if I get too close to people, they might, Or maybe we're afraid because, the person next door is a little violent or angry or not reliable, or maybe they're not the same color, or maybe they're not the same value system or something like that, and we get disconnected by that. Maybe some people would say, oh, I think it's because we're too busy. We're super busy. There's options. We have so many things we have to do. Can't even stop to talk, right? It used to be that we would talk over the back fence because, let's be honest, years and years ago, there was nothing else to do, right? It was that or 3 channels of TV, right? There was nothing, and if the president was on, he's on every channel, right? And so now, not only do you have 500 channels, there's also a million internet sites. And literally, if they upload, if you started right now and watched every minute that is uploaded to YouTube, it would take you 2 weeks watching 24 hours a day nonstop, 7 days a week. It would take you 2 weeks to watch everything that was uploaded to YouTube in the last 60 seconds. We have options. Like there's a lot to do. I mean, I got to click this, because I can't talk. I have to click. Sometimes it's because we're private. We used to talk over the back fence. Now we build privacy fences. And I know I have a privacy fence on my house too. But I don't know if maybe that's one of the reasons. Sometimes it's because we're prejudiced, right? Sometimes it's because we're just comfortable. It's uncomfortable to go out and get to know somebody. I see people nodding on that one, right? Because you have to stretch and you have to risk and you have to get it outside your comfort zone and you have to ask them about themselves, and we don't know how to talk anymore. We just know how to text LOL. That's all we do, right? But it isn't just about connecting with neighbors. I think that the reason there's 4.6 million times that people said people don't know their neighbors anymore out there on YouTube or on the internet is because deep down in your heart and in my heart, we have this longing to connect with somebody else. Even though we don't always, and even though sometimes we still feel alone, we have this thing down inside that says, I want to know somebody and to be known by somebody. I want someone to love and someone to love me back and to think I'm worthwhile, and I want that. The old show Cheers, right? Sometimes you just want to go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came, right? I don't even watch the show. I just know the song because everybody. It's a cultural phenomenon. Everybody wants to know. Go that place. Does God have anything to say about this longing? Does God have anything to say does He have anything to speak to this? He does. He does. And if you're taking notes this morning, God, the idea of community, the idea of relationship, isn't just because it's healthy, although it is, and isn't just because it's a good thing to do, even though it is. The idea of community goes even further back than that. The idea of community starts with the very foundation of our faith, and if you're taking notes, it's the Trinity. God Himself, at His very core, is not alone. God is a God of community. He's a God of connection in His very essence, who He is. He's Father and Son and Holy Spirit, the three of them, one God in three persons, in three centers of consciousness, awareness, personality. God is community. He's not alone. There has never been a time, people say, well, before God created people, God was just alone out there in the universe and He was lonely. No, He wasn't. He wasn't. God has always been in community. And then He created people for His honor and His glory, but He created us in His image. We are all created in His image. So this God who is completely, totally loving and satisfied and together in Himself. The Father loves the Son loves the Father communicates with the Spirit, and the Spirit communicates with the Father and the Son, and they are mutually self-glorifying and admiring and loving of one another. Then He created you, and you, and you, and you. And when He created the world, He said, here's light and it's good. Here's day and night and it's good. And here's animals and it's good. And here's people and here's oceans and plants and all this. And it's good. And the first thing God said was not good. Anybody know what that was? No, it was before that. It was even before sin entered. Man, it is not good that man should be alone. Why? Well, have you ever seen a single guy? Of course you know why it's not good that man should be alone, right? It's like all empty pizza boxes. That's why it's not good for man to be alone. It's socks in a pile in the corner. It's not good for man to be alone. But on a deeper level than that, I'm not just talking about marriage. The truth is that we need each other. We need people. God made you like that. He did. So if God is not alone and He made you as in His image, what happened? What happened? Because let's be honest, we're not naturally connected, right? In fact, I would say probably in some ways we're naturally divided. And I know the politicians stir that up and try to create their little interest group, vote for me because those other people are scary, right? I know that's the technique that they use. But it's not just the politicians' fault. Humans have always been that way. In fact, how is it possible that Adam and Eve come together in the garden and they are a community there together? Man is not alone any longer. And then they sin and they have kids, and their kids, their one generation, and they're killing each other. How did this happen so quickly? Man, that went downhill fast. Wow. What happened? Well, the answer is that sin entered the world, and sin breaks. It divides. It drives wedges between people and families, and it breaks apart connection. So brothers hate each other, and sisters hurt each other, and marriages break up, and families divide, and children are ripped away from one of the parents, and sin breaks stuff all over the place. Even when a marriage itself doesn't break up in divorce, there are plenty of people who are living, and let's just be honest, it's broken. The relationship is broken. The community is broken. There's plenty of Christians out there that really should be more connected to their church family than they are, but there's some reason why they can't, right? Well, and what is that reason? Often it's sin. Somebody's not treating others the way they want to be treated. Treating others the way they want to be treated is a major verse in our house. You might be able to imagine why. And so a couple of days ago, I was talking to one of my kids, and I said, treat him the way you want to be treated. He said, well, that's the way he treated me. I just thought he wanted to be treated that way. Yeah, right. That's not the way it works. What happens? Sin entered the world, and because sin entered the world, there's a lot of brokenness in this area. There's a lot of brokenness. So what are the ways, the broke ways that we relate to each other? If you're taking notes, here we go. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly, okay? Desperation for human approval. John 5:44, how can you believe if you accept praise from one another, yet make no effort to obtain the praise that comes from the only God? So when we're desperate for approval, our insecurity and our pride and our desire for self-glory breaks our relationship, because then when somebody doesn't give us all the approval we feel like that we deserve, then it breaks us and we get angry, we get frustrated. And you ever met people like that? They're desperate. Give me some. Tell me I'm worth something, right? And that desperation, it breaks things because, well, I don't have time to go into it. Let's keep going. Sexual immorality breaks things. Romans 1:24, therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. The brokenness that the sexual revolution helped to create in our world, the sexual revolution promised more freedom and more happiness and more joy, but look around and see, and it didn't deliver. It didn't deliver at all. Instead, it delivered all kinds of brokenness. And you know this is true. That how many of you have seen the drama when somebody cheats on somebody on Facebook? Right? And all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness. You see it happening. It's played out in front of you right there, because sin breaks things and we relate to each other in really broken ways. Hatred, anger, and envy. At one time we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passion and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. The the desire to just hate and break and hurt, and we live in that kind of life: hatred, anger, envy, division, and hurt. If you keep on biting and devouring each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. This stuff right here, right? The sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. How do we all know that lie, right? We all know it, but it really isn't true. Really isn't true. And things that said, you know, and I know, you can go back to a moment with your mom or your dad or a friend in high school, and you can remember every word they said and how they said it. And you remember how it felt. Why? Because when we use that tongue, it lights a fire and burns and hurts and separates, it cuts and slashes. We relate to each other in really, really broken, messed up ways. What's that? The blank. Oh, I'm sorry. Division and hurt. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to find it I was looking for it in my notes here. Pride and arrogance. Pride and arrogance. Galatians 5:26. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other. So when I'm lifted up in pride over top of other people and I see them looking down, I look down my nose at everyone, it breaks the relationship, and we provoke one another in order to show. You ever met that person who's like, they can't wait until you're done talking so they can tell you how amazing they are, right? They're like, you, yeah, me, see, right? See the difference? You, me. And after a while, you're like, you don't want to be around that, right? Because it breaks and it pushes people away. So what are we going to do about this? Has God done anything about this stuff? If this is the broke place, has God done anything about it? And the answer is yes. Jesus' work, so we have brokenness, but Jesus' work is to come and pick up broken pieces and in His grace glue them back together again. That's the glory of His work, is to take broken things and put them back together. We talk a lot about it in terms of our lives and our hearts, that God can come and put together broken pieces of our lives and pick up our broken hearts and put them back together. But can He also fix the brokenness between us, between people, between races, between socioeconomic classes? Can He fix that? And the answer is absolutely. That's why He came. So in Jesus' life, in His life, He comes and He takes a group of disciples. He takes a group of men. 12 guys. Now, if you get 12 guys in a room, eventually one of them is going to disagree about something, right? It's going to happen. These guys, it shouldn't have taken very long. In fact, it didn't take very long. The truth is, they got together, and he takes these guys, and he actually puts guys together from different education levels, different backgrounds, different political philosophies. Some of them, one guy was a zealot. He was one of these what do I say? He would be like a militia member, okay? He's a gun-toting militia member. This is the one guy. Then he takes another guy who's a tax collector. Now, in that culture, that's like taking the militia member and the IRS agent and putting them in the same group. And let's just be honest, those two don't naturally get along. They're not in their natural habitat. You have a question? Did I miss one? Oh, let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sin separates, and breaks relationships. Sin separates and breaks relationships. Thank you. Keeping me straight, because I'm skipping blanks this morning. All right. Let's keep going. So Jesus tells them, guys, here's how we're going to get along. All right? You're going to get along by putting other people ahead of yourself. You're going to lead not by dominating, but by serving. Remember Jesus teaching that? He taught them to wash one another's feet. Now, in this day and age, do we wash one another's feet? Probably not, all right? Probably not. But here's the thing. What does it mean? It's taking the place of the servant, humbling yourself. I pick up the lowest, humblest job in order, whatever's needed in order to serve and bless you. And so he teaches these guys. But then it goes even further than that. In His death, He created a place for rebuilt relationships, rebuilt community. So when Jesus conquers sin on the cross, not only does he conquer your personal guilt, he also conquers the sin that pushes us apart too. This is why we read in 2 Corinthians 5:18 and 19, we read these words, "All this is from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ, and then gave us the ministry of reconciliation, that God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting men's sins against them, and is committed to us the message of reconciliation." Reconciliation is deeper than just forgiveness. It's built on forgiveness, but it's more than that. It is taking two parties and bringing them back together again. The reconciliation, the putting back together of that which was separated. If you look at Matthew 5:24, Jesus gave us another instruction on that. He said, "Leave your gift there in front of the altar." For if you're praying, and you remember that your brother has something against you, Jesus says, leave your gift there at the altar. Okay, so you're, "Oh Lord, I just want to give you the gift of all my heart and my worship," and you remember all of a sudden the Lord brings to your mind, "What about that person that you were unkind to the other day and you said what you shouldn't have said? What about your wife? What about that?" Leave your gift there at the altar, what you were about to give the Lord of your worship, and you go take care of that. Go be reconciled to your brother and then come offer your gift. Wow. Wow. Jesus is saying, if you want to be one with me, you're going to have to be one this way. Oh, that is remarkable. Wow, that's amazing that God would, because we kind of tend to think of spirituality as this personal, private thing that you don't have any right to look at. This is my faith. It's mine. It's mine personally. It's between me and the Lord. But it's not that way, is it? It is not only this way, it's also this way. Now, and I didn't give it. That's my fault. It's a habit. It's a feature, really. Let's try it again. Sin is that which separates us from God and each other. So when sin is dealt with, community is possible again. Community is possible again. You hear the word unity inside that? Community. Togetherness with other people. Unity while still unified. You can have togetherness without unity. Did you know that? You can. Take two cats, put them in a bag, and close the bag up. You have togetherness, but you don't have unity, right? I'm not literally saying I should do that. Right? You should do that all. It's okay. I'm just illustrating the point. Some homes, some churches have togetherness, but they don't have unity, right? But Jesus died to do more than just have us in the same place or location or same home or same church building. He died to make us one, and that's a deeper thing. Now, Jesus has laid the foundation for you to be reconciled not just to God, but to each other. He has laid the foundation to reconcile you not just to God, but also to one another. So the brokenness that sin creates this way can be fixed, and the brokenness that sin creates this way can be repaired. He is in the process of repairing that very thing. Now, how does this work? Now, okay, I want to tell you, some of you, stop and say right here, some of you have repented of sin, and you have, and that's good. But God has more for you than that. God has more steps for you than that. That's why we say at our church that we exist to, you can say it out loud with me if you want, love God, love others, serve the world. God has a journey for you, and it's not just stopping with, oh, me and God, me and Jesus have a wonderful relationship. It is more than that. He wants you to have relationships here. The God who is all that you need said you need other people. Now, I'm going to back up, say that again. All right. I thought Jesus was all that I need. He is, but the God who is all that you need created you to need other people. You don't need to be alone. You don't need to be alone and lonely in your Christian walk. So, where are we going with this, Darrell? All right. 3 things I want you to know today, okay? Number 1, the Bible is about more than just you and Jesus. It's about Jesus and his people. Okay, it's about more than just you and how you can relate to God. It's about how we relate to God. And that's a really significant thing. That's a big shift in our thinking sometimes, because as Americans, we are highly individualistic. It shows up everywhere. It shows up in places you've never thought about before, I guarantee you. If you go to another country, let's say a country somewhere in Asia, a lot of times when people come back, one of the things they talk about is the roads. The roads and the driving is highly different in those cultures. Very, very different. And I'm not saying it's better, it's just that everybody shares the same space. And so you're driving along, and here's a bicycle, and here's a person walking, and here's a mule, and it's all on the same road, and everybody's just like, meh, meh, driving around things and pulling around. And people just get out on the road, and they go on whatever it is they have to go on. But here in America, what happens if somebody starts to come over in your lane, right? Because this is my space. Like even our driving is staked out on the idea of personal ownership and personal kingdom. Kind of like, this is my space, and my line, whenever somebody starts to do that, is all about, hey, my lane, not ours, right? It's my lane, not ours. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong or evil. I'm just saying that as Americans, we tend to think my space, my time, my lane, my life, and you just go over there and have yours, right? And you go over there, and I'll go over here, and we'll both be happy all by ourselves, right? That works out fine on 2-lane roads and 3-lane roads and highways. That's fine. I'm not preaching against it. I'm just saying that when it comes time for here, in church, in community, a lot of times we look at each other and say, and just kind of assume, like, this is my lane, and that's your lane. You stay in your lane, and I'll stay in my lane. I'll relate to God on my own 2 feet. You relate to God over here on your own. But the truth is, that's not what the Bible's about. The Bible is a book not about you and Jesus. It's about Jesus and His people. That God has decided to take a people for Himself. He has decided to take from the world a people that are holy, righteous, and good together, and that are filled with the Holy Spirit together, and are working toward His kingdom together, and that are all citizens of His kingdom together. So, if you're doing this alone, you're doing it wrong. If you're doing the Christian life alone, you're doing it wrong. It's not alone. You say, well, but if they knew like who I really am, or that person, I can't abide them. Then maybe we're getting to the bottom of it. Maybe we're going to need to talk a little bit more about that. Okay. Number two, there's no such thing. The second thing I want you to know, there's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian. There's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian. Anybody ever read or listen to or see the Lone Ranger stuff, the old with Tonto? Yeah. The Lone Ranger, the one masked man with the silver bullets. And he rides in on, "Hail Silver, away!" If you listen to the old radio program, right? Years ago, used to listen to that. And he draws blinding speed and shoots the gun right out of the hand of the bad guy. But even the Lone Ranger had Tonto, right? Even he had somebody. And sometimes Tonto comes along and has to get him out of jams, right? Because even the Lone Ranger can't get out of everything. If you're a Lone Ranger Christian, if you're doing this walk alone, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You need a friend. You need a friend that's not Jim Beam. Jim Beam. Not everybody got that reference. Let me try that again, all right? Let's back up and try it again. I used it on purpose. Jim Beam is a hard liquor, all right? And I use that because it's a name, all right? You need a friend that's not Jack either, okay? And you need, sometimes people run to that because it's the only connection. They're trying to drown something that's lonely. They're alone. And they'll run to Jack and they'll run to Jim because they haven't run to Jesus and to His people. God never intended for you to be alone. In fact, when God when Jesus writes about his people, you know what a lot of the relationship, or a lot of the terminology that he uses for his church, you know what the terminology is? Family, army, nation, a people group, like an ethnicity type idea. These are the kind of terminologies that the Bible uses talking about Christians. All of those are together things. They're us. They're not you. It's not Rambo. It's band of brothers. Right? All right. Let's keep going. If there's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian, David Platt says, private faith in a resurrected Jesus is impossible. Private faith in a resurrected Jesus is impossible. Where it's just me over here, and I'm just going to... The other day I invited a guy to church, and he said, I know the Lord. I said, do you attend church? My opening question was, do you attend church anywhere right now? And no, not really. And I saw the walls go up, you know. And I said, man, we would love to have you come. That'd be awesome. And he said, I love the Lord. I'm sorry, but private faith, and I didn't argue with him because it usually doesn't help, right? I didn't argue with him, but for you, because you're my people and I'm your pastor, okay? For you, private faith in a resurrected Jesus is impossible. You can't do that. John Wesley said it like this: there is no holiness without social holiness. What he's talking about is the connection between God's people, social connectedness together. No holiness without that. There are tons of commands, if you're taking notes, tons of commands in the Bible you can't obey without other Christians. You can't. You can't even obey them. They're called the one another commands. And if there's no other Christians in your life, you can't keep the one another commands. It's impossible. There's I got a whole page of them. I should print it out and show it to you sometime. All the one another commands of the Bible: love one another, serve one another, challenge one another, confront one another, counsel one another, pray for one another, bear one another's burdens. You can't do that without another. You can't do it for yourself. It's not looking in the mirror, right? It's other Christians. You need more even than this weekly worship service. Now, we get up and we do a greeting moment in church, right, together, right? Like everybody stand and find somebody you don't know their name. The reason we do that is because the Bible says 5 different times, greet one another, right? I want to provide a space to be able to do that, all right, and make sure that you have somebody that greets you and says, I'm glad you're here, and somebody looks you in the eyeball instead of just tweeting and tagging you, right? That they actually look at you and say, I'm glad you're here, you personally. Now, if you need to do that, but you need more connection than just that 45 seconds on a Sunday morning. You need more than that. That's why we need membership. That's why we need membership. Because membership is a deepening of the connection between you and a body of believers. It is a deepening of the connection, a commitment that says, I have made my decision, I have made my choice, and I am committed to this people. I have signed on the roster, I've been issued my pads, and I'm going to get on the field. Right? That's the idea behind membership. That's why we need membership. Number three, Jesus calls you to do more than believe. He calls you to belong. Jesus calls you to do more than believe. He calls you to belong. In Psalm 68, verse 6, we read these words: God sets the lonely in families. He leads forth the prisoners with singing, but the rebellious live in a sun-scorched land. If you want to go out there and be that one guy crawling across the desert, right? Can you see him in your mind crawling across the sun-scorched land, and you see the trail he's leaving behind him in the sand? If you want to go be that guy, I'm going to make it to heaven someday, all right? You can go ahead and do that if that's the way you'd like to live. I prefer to live where the party is, all right? And the party is here. Right? The party is with God's people. That's where the relationships are. That's where the joy is. That's where the togetherness and the unity is. Because Jesus has died to do more than just bring you to God. He has died to bring you to each other. Now, I'll be honest with you. Back, we some time ago, some years ago, we started connection groups. And connection groups was a connection thing in homes where we said we want to get together and have some time for Bible study and prayer together and all that. We started that back in the past, and based on some current situations in our church, and Drew was assistant pastor back then. He moved back east, and I was carrying too much at that moment. I said, I've got to back it down. And we went back to our Wednesday night prayer and praise service. Now, at this moment, we don't have a structure in our church to connect you to one another. We have our greeting time, but we've kind of left it up to people. And that we've kind of left it where, and I, from time to time, I'll hear about people connecting, and I'll hear about so-and-so invited somebody over for lunch, and somebody said, hey, can you come over with me after and eat at my house after church service? Or I hear about this kind of stuff, and that fills my heart with great joy as a pastor. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad for it. But we don't currently have a mechanism, a structure, a place where like this is a guaranteed place where you can just go connect with other people. And here's what I find happens over the course of time. What happens is we can have all kinds of issues and pain and difficulty, and nobody knows except you and Jesus. And that's really not how it's supposed to be. That really isn't how it was meant to be. In the Christian church, it really was meant to be more than that. It was meant to be that if you've got a burden, other people help carry it, and other people's shoulders come up under the load. It was meant to be that if you've got a joy, the joy multiplies and explodes because other people share it with you. And your joy becomes the joy of that person over there, and they are so glad and happy for you. And it was meant to be that when you hurt, somebody comes alongside you and puts their arm around you and says, we care about you, we love you. When somebody loses somebody, it can be really, really alone. And I'll be honest with you, I'm afraid we're not doing real well as a church in this area right now. And I'm working on an idea. Because I think it's important to provide you with next steps. Obviously, today is Membership Sunday, and I would love for you to sign up for our membership class. Do that on the way out. That's a great next step. But I will tell you this, that sometimes the next step, even just membership class, a class itself won't connect you to other people. That's things you have to do. You have to go and reach out and talk to them and connect yourself to them and reach out and ask them questions and tell them things and converse with people and then connect with them outside of church time. You got to do that. I can't do it for you. Now, I've got an idea that I'm working on called Care and Connect groups. And without going too far into detail, I would love to have it to where we have a group of people that just are responsible to just get together on your own time 1 week out of the month. And I don't care whether it's on Sunday, I don't care whether it's on Wednesday, I don't care. But somebody just be responsible to say, I'm going to get this group of people together. Hey, can you, and you text or you call or you Facebook message or you something, and you say, hey, I just wondered if we could get together next week. Is there a time? What's your work schedule like? And I don't care if it's in the morning for coffee or in donuts. I don't care if it's in the evening after everybody's off work. I don't care. I just think that we need to have some way that we definitely get together. I'm going to give you more details about that over the next couple of weeks, all right? But we'll talk more about it in the coming weeks. But I just want to put it out here and say, if this is what God has called you to, that He's calling you to more than just ask for forgiveness, but to belong to His family. And if that's what He's calling you to, I have to call you to the same thing. As a pastor, I have to. And I can't hold every relationship string in this church. I can't do it. You got to grab a hold of some of them and reach out to your brothers and sisters that are around you and connect with them. All right? So we're going to talk more about it over the next few weeks, but I got to lay it out for you and say, I felt like God pressed this down on me and said, you got to talk to them about connecting with one another. All right? So that's where we're at. And we're going to wrap up the service today with prayer. But I don't want you to just drop this in your mind and forget about it. I want you to keep it up, think about it, hold it in your mind, and say, Lord, how could I reach out and touch somebody else and connect with another Christian and do the one another's with somebody else in our church. All right? Let's bow our heads together for prayer.